is your relationship with time? Are you wired and tired, stressed and overwhelmed, busy and going nowhere? Or just want to scale your business? Welcome to Take Back Time with your host, Penny Zenker. Penny focuses on books, strategies, tools, and tips to help you work smarter and approach your time more strategically. As a result, you can have more energy, focus, and get more done in less time. Be more efficient and effective. Get ready to take back time.
Hi, everyone. This is Penny Zenker. I'm your host of Take Back Time. And you know, on this show, I'm searching high and low for some of the best people who are going to help you to work smarter. Because at the end of the day, you don't want to work harder. You don't want to do more, right? We want to achieve more in less time. So I'm really looking for those people who are going to help you do that. And today I have a special guest. Julie Bestry is here, and she's a certified professional organizer. So watch out. She's going to get us organized here. And I have to say that even though I talk a lot about time management and it tends to be a lot about organization, squirrel, I can really get distracted easily. I can be clutter filled. And so we need to get some tips from Julie. And I know that I put structures in place because it's a necessity. So that means for you guys too, for various different reasons. And she's now in her 20th year in business, and her company's called Best Results Organizing in Chattanooga. And she'll tell us more about her as we go along. So hi, Julie, welcome to our show.
I'm so glad to be here. Thank you, Penny.
So just tell us up front why you're an organization freak.
Well, I used to work in television, and television industry is, it's fast paced, it's kooky. And if you don't have your resources to get on everything on the air at the right time, you've got dead air. You've got a black screen. People at home don't know whether their TV just blew up or somebody's goofed up at the station. So it's really important to be organized. And as a program director at TV station, I found myself helping other departments sort of streamline and organize their resources, the traffic department, sales, so everybody could talk to one another. And I eventually just found that that was the more interesting part of what I was doing. Than as much as I love television, I found that working for myself and not having angry phone messages on Monday morning because somebody didn't like which football game we were playing on Sunday, I could let that part of it go.
Absolutely. Isn't it funny how what we are most meant to do, it finds us, right? So just naturally you were doing that, and then you ended up coordinating across multiple groups, and right, it just, what we do naturally then naturally attracts.
Absolutely. And, right around 9/11 is when I left the television industry. There were a lot of my syndicators, my people we worked with who were up in the air that day. It was really stressful. A lot of people right after that left the industry. And I was trying to figure out what I was going to do next. And within the course of about a week, I found out about professional organizing as an industry. And totally unrelated, my best friend from college bought me a present. She brought me a label maker. And I thought, okay, that's a sign. That's a sign that I'm headed in the right direction.
That's funny. That's an interesting sign, right? I think the sign was that you were excited about the label maker.
Good point.
I think that's the sign. Good that your friends know you so well, right? So we're here to talk about planners and organizers because people don't spend enough time planning. What's the statistic that for every hour you spend planning, it saves you 10 hours in the back end? Is that what the stat is? Do you know?
That's one of the stats I've heard. I think I'm one of those people who believes that the metric doesn't necessarily matter if the feeling works. Because if you save any amount of time, stitch in time saves nine, any effort that you put forth that brings you a return on that investment is going to be worth it. So
absolutely. But I guess what I'm trying to prove to people who are listening, because we're so busy that we don't take the time to plan. So I want to stop people, make them step back and realize that there's some kind of proof out there. And I hear what you're saying, that at the end it's proven, but to get them to take the motivation, maybe they have to understand that there is a return on investment there.
Absolutely. And one way to sort of authentically, organically prove it is to think about how much you accomplish in, let's say, the 2 or 3 days back when we had vacations and could go places. People who aren't innately planners usually sit down in the week prior to leaving on a vacation and sit down with lists like your guest Paula Rizzo talked about, right. And they look at what needs to be accomplished and they start planning. And usually, they might have a wall full of Post-it notes, or they have scribbles all over the desk. Maybe they have something online. But people who aren't even planners use paper planners. They use digital. They do something to plan their focus because they want to accomplish something. And they're like, wow, they get on that plane. Remember getting on planes? And they feel that sense of accomplishment.
Right. And they feel relaxed because that's why I went, because. And
so whether you're planning so that you can feel that sense of accomplishment at the end of a day or the end of a week, or you're planning just so that you can feel like you're keeping your head and shoulders above the tide. Mm-hmm. I think that planning is essential if you're going to try and get where you want to go. I mean, imagine going on a trip and saying, okay, I'm in Washington, D.C., I'm going to San Francisco, I'm going to drive, and not having a map, not having GPS, and just saying, okay, I'm going to follow the sun. Well, it's only going to work so far, and then you're going to end up having cows blocking your path.
Might happen anyway, but yeah, so it's totally true and so important that we need to make that time. And I love the vacation analogy because it's so true that we get organized before the vacation because there's that much more motivation, right?
Exactly.
So that's an interesting thing. We're going to talk about organizers a little bit, and there's different types of organizers and different reasons why we use organizers. So let's kind of go into sort of the types and the reasons. So
in general, in the professional organizing field, we're often talking about them as planners because that's what you're doing with them. It's like whether it's a really basic calendar or something more complex. And so we go into all of these sort of weighing, okay, are we going to go digital and we're just going to have apps on our phone, or we're going to go with paper? I'm a paper person. That doesn't mean my clients use paper, but it means that if somebody is more inclined to use paper, I'm going to let them know, and I'm often letting them know it's okay in the 21st century to be using a paper planner, because I think people feel a little guilty about that. But, there are all of these apparent advantages and disadvantages. And I go, okay, not so fast. So I set them up sort of as dichotomies. There's heart versus head. A lot of paper planners are designed to appeal to aesthetic preferences. It's like, oh, I like pretty office supplies, or they're aspirational features, where you're going to put your goals versus just your tasks and appointments. And digital things usually appeal to purely functional, practical people, or so they say. But there are a lot of practical planners out there. So that's heart versus head. There's ease versus learning curve. Okay. Unless you pick what I think is a super complex DIY kind of planner like bullet journaling. And I know people love bullet journaling. Yeah.
Well, you got to be creative and want to do that because that's just a blank page like that.
Exactly. So with most paper planners, there's no learning curve. With a lot of tech, there is a learning curve. And the interesting thing is there's digital fatigue out there. People were saying, people are only going to
real.
Yeah. People said, nobody's ever going to read books again. It's all going to be ebooks. But the sales studies show that millennials are buying more and more print books than ebooks. And Google and various other companies are banning electronics for when they're doing 5-day workplace sprints because they know it helps increase focus and clarity. So going digital with all of the beeps and boops and notifications across your screen means that, the learning curve is sometimes a little too steep, and the frustration of the technology. Cost versus free. Let
me back up for a second. Sure. I'm not sure if this goes here or not, but it came to my mind is sometimes because of that learning curve with the digital side, and we throw the baby out with the bathwater. So the minute we get to know something a little bit, we use it for a little bit, and then we fall back into old ways, or we didn't know how to really use it effectively. So we blame the tool. Mm-hmm. It's the tool's fault. And then we move on to the next tool. And so we're constantly in this learning curve with these digital products.
Especially because the products keep changing. Evernote is a perfect example. When people start with Evernote, they tend to just use it as almost like a file box. It's like they can clip something from the web and it's there. And then if they get some training, then they see how powerful it can be. And then the company that makes it comes out with all of these changes. And then there's that learning curve there. You and I were talking about Trello a little while ago, and you can use a little bit of Trello, or you can be a power user or anywhere in between. But it's daunting when we already have incredibly busy lives.
Yes.
So then again, this is a reason I like a paper planner, because there's nobody over the age of about 8 who can't figure out how to put what they need to in a paper planner. There are more efficient ways versus less efficient ways to use a paper planner, but you're not going to all of a sudden pick up your planner pad or your Franklin planner one day and find that the pages look completely different from how they did yesterday.
Right. That definitely is a benefit. I want to also say, you said, I think it's important to identify for yourself what works for you and what doesn't, right? Because everybody has different ways of working, and that's totally fine. And this is part of the process, I believe, is to see also what works best for you so that your planning is most efficient and effective, and that you check in on it and see, is this working for me? And what do I need to do to make this work?
You're so right. All these things that I'm sort of going through, these dichotomies, will come down to one thing. It's commitment. Any system you have, whether it's paper or digital or hybrid, whether it's for planning or filing or retrieving or creating anything, it only works if you commit to that system. It's a relationship like any other.
And I like that. Yeah, it's a relationship. You're totally right. So
if you're speed dating, if you're trying 3 days of doing this system and 2 weeks of this planner and just bouncing back and forth, you're never going to commit to that relationship, and it's never going to be as rich or as robust as that 40-year marriage. We just saw.
Love that. That is so awesome. Stop speed dating, people. Make a commitment.
Don't speed date your systems. Exactly.
Speed date with your planner.
So we were saying there's cost versus free, another dichotomy. People think, okay, all our digital stuff, maybe an app is a few dollars. There are a couple, pricier ones. But, for the most part, keeping track of your appointments, your planning things, it's all whatever's already in your phone or your computer. You have to buy a planner. And while that's true, sometimes your investment increases your commitment. You and I couldn't have planned this better, this back and forth, that if the key is commitment, well, if you get something free, I see this all the time with people with clutter in their homes. You go to a conference, back when people went to conferences, and you get all of the swag in the swag bag. People bring back all the free stuff, including the hotel shampoos, and it just sits there and piles up until the professional organizer comes and says, come on, I think we can find a nonprofit who can use this stuff better. And what is this thing even anyway? And so if there is a small cost to something, that cost is probably being offset by somewhere in the back of your brain making more of a commitment because you don't want to have wasted that money. There's private versus searchable. Anytime you're dealing with something where you're putting all of your information either somewhere in the cloud or even on your computer, there's always that little tingle in your head that's like, okay, who can get at this? Not that you're going to be putting a lot of deeply personal stuff unless you're, involved in corporate espionage. There's not a lot of secrets in your planner, but your planner is yours personally. Think about like when you're, 11 years old and you're doodling your first name and that cute person's last name in your notebook. It's like, I hope you're not doing that in the notes section of your planner now, because if you're like in your 30s or older, that's just weird. But if you are, nobody sees your planner but you.
Okay, note to self, I'll stop that.
Yeah. And then the big thing is the dichotomy between control and convenience. And it all comes down to, if you go to schedule something, let's say, perfect example, when you sent me the email to create this appointment. All I had to do was click on a little button that said accept, and I had to make the choice, do I want to accept with comments or without comments, or I could have rejected it. But of course, I'd never reject you. Whereas when you have to stop and have some depth of thought regarding your time, regarding how much effort you can put into not just being somewhere, but preparing to be somewhere, and you're using a paper planner, you're going to look at everything in context. So control versus convenience, I'm always going to lean more toward control, except when it comes to food, because I don't cook and then I want convenience and they can put whatever they want in my food. But when we're brainstorming, when we're scheduling, when we're breaking our projects down into discrete tasks, we're thinking about context. When you see a whole month of appointments and you've got a paper planner, you instinctively go, oh man, that's a really heavy week. I'm going to ask this person, can we maybe go a week later? Whereas if all you're seeing is maybe a little accept or reject icon and it's going over on your calendar and you're not spending a lot of depth of time and effort in your digital calendar, which is the case, I find, for most people, you're going to find yourself sort of constantly responding to other people's needs instead of focusing on your own. So
you'll be quickly overbooked, right?
Exactly.
So that point of control is really important. It's actually something that's coming up over and over in these days, not just around our planners, right? That we're in a time where there's a lot that's out of our control, right? There's a lot of things going on.
Especially this year.
Right. This year, right? Just with politics and weather and, COVID and health-wise, there's a lot of stuff that we can't control, or there's things that we can influence. And then there's the things that we absolutely can control, right? Those are the circles of influence. And I find that there's an interesting relationship that we have because we're all control freaks in some shape or form. So we want to have control. So we try to control the things that we naturally can't control. And that creates stress. But there's this weird thing that I've recognized, and this is where distractions and planning come in, is that where we do have 100% control, we don't take it. So I'm trying to wrap my head around this lately because there's like a story and something more that I want to bring out about this. So what's your thought on that? I know we're digressing a little bit, but it's really back to the same thing. And it's just coming from maybe a different perspective from your side with the planners. What's going on there? Why don't we take control where we can?
I think maybe we think we are controlling things, or maybe we don't believe we can. I think in the year of 2020, it's easy to have 2020 hindsight, but when you're in the hole, it's hard to dig yourself out. I think a lot of times we need something outside ourselves. I think this is one of the reasons why accountability buddies work so well, is because we can have everything written down in our planner. We can have our list of what our tasks are. We're really good at fulfilling obligations to other people. Okay.
Yeah.
So we cede control because we feel like if we are going to get, where we need to go, we're going to fulfill our obligations to others. You and I had a plan to do this podcast. So whatever else was going on in my day today, I knew for a fact I was going to be sitting here with you. But without not only a good plan for my day, but also without that willpower and sort of stick-to-itiveness, everything that was about meeting my own goals could have gotten lost in the rabbit hole of, going through social media or reading the news. So I don't think it's intentional on anyone's part. I think we end up ceding control because we're focused on what we are going to be perceived to have done, what other people are going to know we did. And we're so exhausted by that when we have an opportunity to let our guard down, we sort of just get grabbed and sink further into the morass of all of those interruptions.
Right. It just brought me with a really interesting point of view. So guys, I'm sorry, we're going shark deep here, but just for another moment, and then we'll come back up to the planning side. What you said was interesting. So, right, is that we cede our control because of our need and our desire to please others, right? And it's exhausting. And then we don't take it back because we're exhausted. So I don't know. I think that's a new insight for me. I have to mull that around and think about that. But that's really interesting. And let's bring that back around to how planners can help us take back that control and please ourselves first.
I think it's partly figuring out the power that a planner can have. I have this theory, okay, and nobody's proven it yet, but sort of associated fields have proven it. There's something called the encoding hypothesis, and it goes into the studying of note-taking. Apparently, there's two different kinds of note-taking. There's generative note-taking. That's when you're in 11th grade math class or a history course, or you're in a meeting, I guess even a Zoom meeting, and you're taking notes. You're not transcribing it, you're summarizing, you're paraphrasing, you're trying to get at that concept mapping. Right. And then there's non-generative note-taking. It's when your spouse says to you, okay, we need this from the grocery store, and you write down exactly what they say. You're basically taking turn-by-turn directions, you're writing that list, and it's writing a transcript, basically. So there was this study published in Psychological Science. This Professor Pam Muller at Princeton and Daniel Oppenheimer at UCLA looked at how note-taking by hand affected learning versus note-taking by computer. And there had been other research into this that had said you learn more from taking notes by hand, but the theory was, oh, well, that's because there's multitasking, there's distraction, all those beeps and boops and all the different things you can see on the screen. But Muller and Oppenheimer looked deeper, and they found that when you're trying to learn concepts, just transcribing gives you sort of a shallower intellectual processing field. That's what they called it. They did 3 interrelated studies. They saw that students who took notes on laptops performed worse on these conceptual questions than students who took longhand. No word on whether they were printing or writing in cursive, but the laptop note takers were transcribing. They were just trying to write down what they were hearing verbatim. So their brain wasn't processing the information and reframing it in their own words. It was just copying it. That's probably because you can't handwrite as fast as someone else can talk. So you tend to pick out the key thoughts and just, you translate it when you're not transcribing. So I have this theory that when you're using a paper planner, it works the same way, that when you schedule an appointment digitally, you're jumping in and you are just typing things. When you are planning your tasks for the day, it's just, copying over things, looking at your email and typing things down. But when you've got a paper planner, when you've got a notebook, when you're bullet journaling, anything like this, I think you're looking, goes back to what we said about context, but you're really thinking about what information is going to be essential. And it's the difference between saying, hey, I should give a speech about this thing on Thursday versus, oh, if I've got to give a speech about this on Thursday, I've got to get the speech at least outlined and written by Tuesday. So I better do my research on Monday. And you think with a greater depth of context when you have to write something down versus when you type it. A lot of times people will say, did I send you an email about that or did I just think about that?
Right.
But people remember if they wrote an actual handwritten letter or sent a birthday card or left a Post-it note on somebody's windshield because there is the intellectual, the cognitive, the physical all being bound together.
True. That's interesting. And, recent studies have also shown about people who journal, right? The studies have also shown that through journaling, you go deeper into your processing. So that this is all kind of linked, right? In terms of that writing is creating that deeper thought and that deeper connection to it. So that makes sense.
Which probably explains why in 12-step programs, in mindfulness courses, in a variety of disciplines, they're recommending journaling. I will say I'm terrible at journaling, but yay for anybody who is good at journaling.
Well, there's different ways to journal too, just like there's different ways to plan, right? So
true.
Some of them can be fill in this sentence, some of them can be blank paper. So it depends, what type of person you are again, as to which one of those is going to be the most effective. So, wow, this got a lot deeper than I was thinking, Let's talk a little bit. Do we have anything more that you wanted to share about like types and specifics around planners?
About the mindset for going in? No, I think we're good for that. I think you're right, though. We got deep because if you know why all of these decisions are important and you know why paper planning might be a good option for you, you're much more likely to feel a little less guilt about not using the fanciest app. I think the more you think about why you do anything, what Simon Sinek calls, the why, if you know your why, you're going to be much more empowered to make all of your other decisions.
Absolutely. The why before the how. The how will figure itself out if you're connected to your why. So what next then? I want to keep cognizant that people don't, I know that they like these 20, 30-minute shows or whatnot. So what's next? And then maybe we'll have to plan a second one. But what do you feel like is next before we close out the show?
Well, I think it's just really quickly thinking about what kind of person you are. Do you want simplicity and flexibility, or do you want something that's going to let you get into the nitty gritty of writing down every little detail of your life? So in terms of what kind of content's going to go into your planner, do you want one that just has a place to put appointments and tasks, or do you want one with motivational quotes and cartoons? Do you want habit tracking and budgets and a place to plan your meals and write down your gratitude bullet points and do your goal setting? Mm-hmm. Do you need creative fields for brainstorming, for taking notes? Do you have a good question is, do you have good handwriting? If you have nice, precise architect student handwriting, you can have small boxes. I have big, loopy, crunchy, like wrinkly handwriting for somebody who, the more you type, the less precise your handwriting is. So I need adequate space to show my appointments. You have to know, do you want a great big binder that feels there's sort of gravitas about that weight in handling it versus do you want something sort of, that will lay flat on your desk and have a sort of executive feel to it that you're not going to be carrying around with you to appointments? Do you want aesthetic concerns to be considered, whether you want big rings or coils?
Yeah, there's a lot that goes into choosing a planner.
There is. I mean, some people want a fancy zippered leather binder, and other people can get an at-a-glance schedule that looks like how they used to write down appointments at the dentist's office. Right. The key is you have to know yourself. And if you know your style, you can move forward to finding something that's going to work for you. And our next opportunity, we can talk about not necessarily what brand recommendations, but what types are good for what an individual is hoping to do with their planner.
Well, we will do that. We'll talk about what types in another call. And maybe also, I know that you maybe a little bit more detailed about time blocking. I'm sure you've got some more specific tips and tricks up your sleeve around that too, when we get into specific planning your week.
Absolutely.
I will note that down for next time, and that'll get all of you excited about part 2, and we'll probably go even deeper. Who knows? But anyway, Julie, where can people find out more information about you and what you do and all that you do? I know that you can help people virtually since we're not meeting in person. Where would they go to contact you?
So it's easy. It's my name. You go to juliebestry.com. That's Juliebestry.com. And you can find my blog, which is mostly about paper, but all sorts of organizing. There are articles about organizing the other areas of your life, information about my services. And yes, 2020 is the year of doing things virtually. So you can have all of those discussions too.
Awesome. Is there anything else that you wanted to share during this interview before we sign off?
I just want people to know that they can have, if they don't like to think of it as control, they can have mastery over their schedules. And for people who have had difficulty mastering their time, there are solutions for you.
And it all starts with, as we talked about, getting in that right mindset and knowing what works for you and what doesn't. So awesome. Well, thank you, Julie. I'm looking forward to having you back and doing a second interview because I know we'll get into some more details as well.
Thanks, Penny. This was great.
So thank you all for being here, right? You got part 1 and you know that there's more. So I want you to keep scrolling or whatever you do as new episodes, and get subscribed so that when new episodes come out that you're going to be notified and be able to catch it right away. So my name is Penny Zenker, and this is Take Back Time. I'll see you in the next episode.
Thank you for listening. Today's topic is another opportunity for you to put the knowledge you learned into practice. Tune in again next week for more strategies that will help you have more energy and focus to get more done in less time, so you can continue to take back time.